My name is Sandy. I'm 26 and a homemaker. I'm a newlywed, and I really regret getting married now. The bullying from my mother-in-law, Patricia, who is 55, and my husband, Michael, who is 30, is unbearable. I thought they were both so nice before we got married and that we could live happily ever after. That's why when Patricia asked me to move in with them after my father-in-law passed away a few years ago, I gladly agreed. But as soon as we got married, they changed dramatically. Moreover, I discovered that my husband's brother, who was a recluse, lived with them, which they hadn't told me about. The morning after our wedding, I was shocked to find an unfamiliar man drinking tea in the kitchen. That's when I first met Michael's younger brother, Jonathan, 27. Jonathan, while sipping his coffee, helped me stand up because my legs buckled in surprise. Then he introduced himself, saying, "I'm Jonathan, 27 years old, a recluse disliked by my mother and brother." His gentle manner of speaking made him seem like a good person, so I was reassured. Just as we started to chat, my mother-in-law woke up and came in. "Jonathan, stay in your room until you're ready to leave. I'll bring your food later," she told him, shooing him away with her hand. I suggested, "Mother-in-law, why don't we have breakfast together with Jonathan?" But she barked back at me, "Mind your own business. How dare you, just a daughter-in-law, give me orders?" I was shocked to see a completely different side of my mother-in-law, who had been so kind to me until yesterday. Her face, attitude, and manner of speaking had changed completely. She had always called me Sandy with a smile, but now she was calling me you with a demon-like look. Jonathan told me, "Sister-in-law, this is my mother's true colors. She and my brother have been deceiving you by pretending to be nice. I recommend that you escape while you can." His words left me bewildered. "Wyatt, I won't let our free housemaid escape that easily. We're taking in an orphan with no parents for free, so be grateful," my mother-in-law added. After hearing this, I wanted to run away as Jonathan suggested, but I decided to stay and talk to my husband, whom I married out of love. Then my husband woke up looking sleepy. "What's with all this noise so early in the morning? Can't you let me sleep?" He glared at me with a face I'd never seen before, looking so grumpy. In that moment, I realized that what Jonathan had said about my husband deceiving me was true. As I stepped back in fear, my husband changed his expression and said, "Just kidding. Mom, get along with my wife." Then he pulled me into his embrace. I was surprised to hear my husband call his mother Mom, but I was relieved to think that he was back to his usual self and quickly forgot about his previous angry gaze. Feeling more reassured, I thought maybe he looked so grumpy because he had just woken up. I said, "I'll make breakfast," and prepared breakfast for the four of us and put it on the table. But my husband said, "Take Jonathan's portion to his room." "Sorry for not telling you, but I have a brother who's like a piece of junk shut-in. I was too embarrassed to tell you." Mother-in-law chimed in, "He locks himself in his room all the time and barely goes out. He's nothing like Michael. You wouldn't think they're brothers." All they did was badmouth Jonathan. I took breakfast to Jonathan's room and knocked on his door. He thanked me but tried to close the door, saying, "Don't worry about me. I'll go out to eat." Feeling sorry for him, I blurted out, "Eating out all the time isn't healthy." "Now that I'm a part of this family, I'll take care of everyone's health." He only repeated, "You should get out of here." I'm scared of being alone after my parents passed away. I felt a tightness in my chest and tears welled up. I was taken back to when my parents died. I was diagnosed with PTSD and am still receiving treatment. I might be projecting my situation onto Jonathan. "I'll bring some more food later," I informed Jonathan and returned to the living room. Then my husband asked, "Can you finish up the housework and come to the convenience store at noon?" I responded with, "All right," and agreed. After seeing off my husband to the convenience store where he works, the bullying from my mother-in-law started. Wash the dishes, clean up, and finish weeding the garden all by this morning, she instructed as she started drinking tea in the living room. I replied and started cleaning the dishes. Before cleaning each room, I peeked into the garden to see how many weeds there were. To my surprise, the garden appeared as though it hadn't been weeded for years. It seemed like lots of bugs might come out, and I shuddered at the thought. Looking up at the sky, I saw cloudy weather with dark rain clouds, so I decided to hurry up with the cleaning. After cleaning the living room and dining room, I finished cleaning all the rooms except for Jonathan's room on the second floor. I heard a loud noise from the first floor, so I hurried over there. The entire kitchen floor was drenched in salad oil. "Clean up the spilled oil," she said, and it was clear that she had removed the cap from the salad oil and spread it around. The bottle was empty, and it was spread over a wide area. "Why would you do something like this?" I confronted my mother-in-law. "What, you think I did this on purpose? How terrifying. You're an awful daughter-in-law. It's your fault for leaving things where I walk." Instead of talking, "Get to cleaning," she yelled, throwing a roll of paper towels at me. Remembering that I had to go to the convenience store my husband runs after cleaning the garden, I hurriedly cleaned the kitchen floor while kneeling and soaking up the oil with the paper towels. My mother-in-law bumped into me, and I ended up diving onto the oily floor. "Move when I'm coming, you're in the way." Unbelievable. I was left with regrets of moving in just 2 days after our wedding. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. It took quite a while to clean the floor. After that, during the garden cleanup, I was bitten by mosquitoes dozens of times as I desperately pulled weeds and bagged them up. Finishing the task completely drained me. Thankfully, the garden wasn't large. I didn't have much time until noon, but I couldn't go out with my body dirty from the oil and sweat, so I quickly took a shower. I thought I had prepared my underwear and clothes before entering the bathroom, but when I came out, everything was gone. I guess that's my mother-in-law's doing again. I was frustrated, but I didn't have time to argue. After drying my body, I thought I would go to the bedroom wrapped in a bath towel, but even the bath towel was gone. I couldn't put on the clothes I had been wearing because they would dirty my body again. I wiped my body with a face towel I had used in the bath, covered my body with it, and hurried to the bedroom on the second floor. My mother-in-law was recording a video, laughing hysterically. I thought, I can't live with this woman anymore. As I climbed the stairs, I found a bath towel midway. I quickly wrapped it around myself and went to the bedroom. I was so frustrated that I felt like crying, but I held back, thinking that it would make my mother-in-law happy. As I hastily changed clothes and left the bedroom, I saw Jonathan. "Listen, sis-in-law, you really need to get out of this house as soon as possible." "That lady lives for this kind of stuff," he said, and handed me a piece of paper with his WhatsApp QR code on it. "I know you're in a rush, but if anything happens, hit me up here." Then he went back into his room. I pocketed the paper and headed to my mother-in-law's room to tell her I was going to my husband's convenience store. She didn't respond, just kept watching and laughing at a video on her smartphone. I think she might be watching the video of me from earlier, which nearly brought me to tears again, but I ran off to see my husband. Once at the convenience store, my husband told me to go into the office. He half smiled as he handed me the store uniform. "Sandy, I gotta say you looked super sexy climbing up the stairs naked. Next time make sure you've got your towel and clothes ready before hitting the shower. It's embarrassing," he said. "I had them with me. Your mom must have hidden them." "Didn't you see the towel halfway up the stairs?" I had no time to look for my clothes and underwear, I replied, my composure slipping as I started crying. My husband started recording me with his phone. "If my mom is giving you a hard time and you don't cry and get all frustrated, I'll send her this video." "You'd better satisfy her to the end. It's such a burden that you're making me record this and send it to Mom," he said as he rushed me to get dressed in the store uniform. I just did what I was told and slipped into the uniform. I was devastated by my husband's words, tears streaming down my face as he led me into the store. He introduced me to a woman working there and told her to show me the ropes before he left the store. She was a kind, middle-aged lady named Mrs. Sophia. Working at my husband's convenience store with my eyes swollen from crying, she gently told me, "The boss probably won't be back for a while. Why don't you take a break in the office?" But I thought if he's watching through security cameras, he and his mother would tag team scold me if I rested, so I asked her to teach me the work instead. Mrs. Sophia was so kind and patient as she showed me what to do. We restocked shelves, and she showed me how to remember where things went, how to place orders, and work the register. "Let's start by getting restocking down pat," she said with a smile, and we quickly became good friends. My husband came back to the store around 5 p.m. "You can go home now." "Do some shopping on your way back and start on dinner," he said, and began working in the store. Mrs. Sophia was also off at 5 p.m., so we prepared to leave together. As we were leaving, a college student-looking guy came into the office and started changing into a uniform. We said goodbye and left. As we were leaving, Mrs. Sophia said, "If you need anything, give me a call," and we exchanged numbers. I thanked her through my tears. "Thank you for being so kind," I said. She replied, "I knew something was up, poor thing," and gave me a hug. We stood like that for a moment, but I had to rush home to shop and cook before I could imagine what my mother-in-law might do next. Once I got home, I was swamped from preparing the bath to cooking dinner. My mother-in-law exclaimed, "You didn't take the bag full of garden waste to the dumpster, did you? Hurry up and take it." Thinking about having to carry those 5 heavy bags by myself made me feel dizzy. However, I didn't know what she'd do if I didn't go, so I followed her directions. It only takes about 2 minutes to reach the dumpster, but the bags were so heavy that I had to rest multiple times and carry them one at a time. Then I ran into Jonathan, who was outside. "It's her again," Jonathan said, and helped me carry the bags to the dump. "You better get going soon or you'll collapse. You know you don't have to stay silent like me." While saying this, he helped me carry all the bags to the dumpster. I wanted to thank him and invite him into the house, but Jonathan said, "If we go in together, it will give away that I helped with the trash, so you go in first." So I went in the house alone. After a little while, my husband came back with Jonathan. Jonathan went straight to his room, and my husband headed to the living room. "Sandy, from today you'll be working at the convenience store in the daytime and night. The night shift starts from 8 p.m., so you'll have to leave soon," he said. I replied, "I'm already exhausted from today. Plus, I'm scared of the night and I haven't learned the job yet. It's impossible." His face turned devilish at my response. "Don't you dare defy me when I'm getting you a job." He intimidated me by pounding the wall. Even my mother-in-law chimed in, "We don't need 2 pieces of junk in our house. Your wife will work for the house," she shouted at me. I hated to leave Jonathan alone, but as he said, I thought I'd collapse if things stayed as they are, so I decided to leave the house. That's when my husband pulled out the divorce papers from his bag and handed them to me. "If you can't work, there's no point in being married. Feel free to leave if there's anywhere for an orphan with no money to go, huh?" My mother-in-law and husband watched me with smug smiles. At that moment, I decided I would never forgive these people. I realized I needed to distance myself from my husband and mother-in-law for now, so I decided to head to the convenience store. The night shift at the store was quiet with no customers, which was really a blessing. I registered Sophia and Jonathan on my WhatsApp account and exchanged messages with the 2 of them. I was able to receive information from them that I hadn't known before. Jonathan informed me that my husband had previously decided to marry a woman, brought her home, and did the same things he's doing to me now, causing her to flee before the marriage was finalized. That's why he had been acting all sweet until he married me. Furthermore, the next act of harassment against me was apparently to hide the engagement ring my husband gave me and blame me for losing it. According to Jonathan, my mother-in-law and husband were gleefully planning this in the living room right now. Jonathan, who has 2 cell phones, leaves one in the living room in call mode to record their conversations. He sent me a message with a laughing emoticon. Sophia shared that my husband had some sort of relationship with an older woman working at the convenience store. The woman was married, so supposedly he went to her house during the day when her husband wasn't around. Because of this, Sophia, who was being made to work even as a store manager, was upset, or so the story went. I couldn't believe what I was reading and read the message over and over again. Not knowing what to do on my own, I asked if we could form a group and share information. Both of them were more than willing, so we set up a group chat on WhatsApp. In the group chat, I told them that my husband gave me the divorce papers when I decided to leave the house. Jonathan was glad and said, "I'm glad you finally decided to leave." But I said, "Jonathan, you're leaving with me too." In the group chat, I revealed something I hadn't told my mother-in-law or my husband. After I revealed it, I told them I planned to take revenge on my mother-in-law and husband. Sophia and Jonathan both said they wanted to help. Sophia said with difficulty, actually, and told me she had a recording on a voice recorder that could serve as evidence of my husband's affair with the woman, and also a picture of the 2 of them entering the woman's house. Apparently, she also had a recording of what my husband said at the office today about filming me crying and sending it to my mother-in-law. Jonathan asked Sophia to trust him with all the information, and Sophia agreed. That's the proof of your cheating husband and bullying mother-in-law, isn't it? Jonathan was tasked with compiling the information. Sophia was gathering further evidence of my husband's infidelity, and I decided to engage a lawyer and look for new homes for both Jonathan and myself. When Sophia wondered aloud, "Isn't it bad that I'm recording?" Jonathan replied, "You just happened to bring a voice recorder that was in record mode, right?" Sophia seemed to be laughing as she said, "That's right. It was just by chance." I never thought I'd make such wonderful friends in such a short period of time. It felt like my parents were guiding me, that they were certainly by my side protecting me. Since we must keep the group's existence a secret, I decided to lock my phone. After a while, my husband told me, "The relief guy is coming at 1, so you can come home." So I went back to the house where my husband and mother-in-law were. They were both already asleep, so I messaged Jonathan to hurry up with the moving preparations. Jonathan had messaged me, "Get that divorce paper filled out soon and have a good sleep." The next day was the same routine of housework, working at the convenience store, returning home for more housework, and again the convenience store. But before heading to the evening shift, as expected, my mother-in-law said, "Show me the engagement ring you received from Michael." I retorted, "It's not here since you hid it, mother-in-law," and headed off to the convenience store. Jonathan showed up at the convenience store when my husband wasn't around and received a voice recorder from Sophia. Jonathan quickly gathered and summarized information for me. Sophia had made a comment to my husband's mistress's husband when he visited the store. "You know, our owner and your wife are very close. The owner is mysteriously absent when your wife is off." Apparently, she dropped this hint so blatantly that it would surely make the husband suspicious. The husband seemed to be heading back to the office from an outside appointment, but we guessed that he might have gone home instead. Sophia shared this in our group chat. Armed with the information Jonathan had compiled, I went to consult with a lawyer I knew. The lawyer assured me this should be enough and gave his approval. Then the location for Jonathan's and my move was decided. Finally, the curtain was raised on my revenge. I had endured my mother-in-law's and husband's daily bullying for this moment. For the preparation, I pretended to grovel before my mother-in-law and husband. On my husband's day off, I said, "Mother-in-law, I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble due to my incompetence. This is not a peace offering, but I would like to gift Michael and you a one-night stay at a hot spring resort." Mother-in-law responded, "Finally, you've given in." "That's right. Keep spending your time and money like this," and she accepted the voucher. "When is it?" she asked. "Tomorrow." "Isn't that a bit sudden?" I said apologetically, "I'm broke and couldn't afford anything but this discounted deal." My husband then said, "Mom, I can leave work to Sandy tomorrow so we can go. This is a gift from a poor orphan, so if we decline, we may not get this chance again. Just work without complaining and I'll let you stay here." He was all set to go. Mother-in-law also said, "Don't think this will stop the bullying. It's my pleasure, but if you give me gifts like this, my mood is up a little." In high spirits, the two of them left early in the morning. They didn't even know that the accommodation voucher I gave them was a discount voucher. Once they had left as planned, the movers came. They loaded mine and Jonathan's belongings into a truck, and we moved to our new location. Our new home was a large house, one of the properties left to me by my parents. The secret that I hadn't told my mother-in-law or husband was that I had a large inheritance from both my parents and my paternal grandfather. The other properties, like apartments, were managed by a company I had established. I had entrusted the management to a cousin I trust. I am the owner of that company. I also inherited other significant assets, such as insurance money. I decided to live with Jonathan in the large house where my grandfather lived, which had remained vacant because I didn't want to rent it out to anyone. I figured this would be a spot where my mother-in-law and my husband wouldn't find me. The day after I moved, I received an angry phone call from my mother-in-law. This is not a discount voucher. I'll get back to you. Michael is very upset too. I will not forgive you. Get a divorce and leave, you trash. Leave and don't show your face again. Take the trash Jonathan with you too," she said, quite furious. "Okay, got it. I've already submitted the divorce papers," I responded, which led her to hand the phone over to my husband. "Marrying a worthless person like you was a mistake. Get lost, orphan," he spat before hanging up. Jonathan and I ended up laughing heartily and celebrated. Sophia had already submitted her resignation to the convenience store's headquarters and had decided to work full-time at my cousin's company. Sophia, a single mother, was happy to have a stable income now. She was going to bring her child here to celebrate together. Jonathan seemed to have a hard time moving since he had been holed up working until Sophia arrived. Jonathan was an investor making money from his online lectures. In fact, he seemed to be making a significant amount of money every month. After a while, Sophia and her child came, and we had a party and deepened our friendship. The next day, I received another call from my mother-in-law, who had returned from her trip. "Did you move? Is Jonathan with you too?" she asked, to which I played dumb. "I've moved out already." "Oh, Jonathan moved out too?" I inquired. "It seems so. It's fantastic that 2 pieces of trash disappeared at once," was my mother-in-law's bitter response. Later, my lawyer contacted me. "Michael and your mother-in-law have accepted the content of the notification. They seem willing to pay as requested to avoid a lawsuit." Afterward, that amount was transferred to my account. Just when I was getting used to living with Jonathan in our odd arrangement, my ex-mother-in-law, in a state of panic, began spamming my phone with calls. Looking at my call history showing 50 missed calls per second, I received another call from my ex-mother-in-law. "Do you know where Jonathan is? If you know, tell me," she demanded, to which I simply replied, I don't know, and tried to end the call. Wait, how much money do you have in savings? She asked next. Why do I have to tell a stranger about my savings? Goodbye, I said and hung up. But then I received another call from my ex-mother-in-law. Why did you hang up? Return the money I gave you. It seems she was talking about the consolation money she and my ex-husband had paid me. I was about to hang up the phone again, saying I didn't need to repay the money because it's the money I don't have to return, when she exclaimed, Wait, hear me out before you decide. I'm really in a tough spot, and started telling me why she needed the money. Apparently, my ex-husband was being sued for alimony by the husband of the woman he cheated with. Thanks to Sophia, the husband of the woman he cheated with was able to gather evidence quickly by hiring a private investigator. Moreover, once the convenience store head office found out about the relationship between the employee and my ex-husband, they terminated their contract with him. On top of a substantial penalty, he was being sued for damaging the reputation of the convenience store, and the amount he owed was beyond his means. Around that time, I happened to hear from a friend of Jonathan's that Jonathan makes more money than my ex-husband. Though my ex-mother-in-law had been looking for Jonathan, if she could get back the alimony she paid to me, everything would go well, she said. Fine, Jonathan. Don't you know how to contact Jonathan? And when will you repay the money? The sooner the better, she said. So I responded, $50,000 isn't a big deal. Please stop making a fuss about petty cash. It's embarrassing. I have money and property left to me by my parents, so I'm not in financial trouble. However, I'm not so generous as to give money to complete strangers, so please look elsewhere. She yelled, You're going to abandon your husband and me, your mother-in-law? You're heartless. Pay me back. I retorted, What you've done to me since the first day after our marriage is far worse. If you call me again, I'll contact the police and a lawyer. Don't forget that we are nothing but strangers. After hanging up the phone, I never received a call from my ex-mother-in-law again. But I started receiving love letters from my ex-husband begging for reconciliation, which I ignored just like I did with my ex-mother-in-law. As for my ex-husband, even after selling his house, he didn't have enough money, and since everyone knew he had taken advantage of an employee, he couldn't get a job in the same industry. So he seems to be working as a traffic control person on a road construction site. My ex-mother-in-law reportedly started working part-time at a supermarket, but because of her personality, she doesn't have anyone to talk to and is isolated at work. As for me, I actually got married to Jonathan 2 years later, and we're living very happily. Jonathan's proposal was, Let's be together in your parents' grave. Though he married into my family and took my surname, I am currently pregnant and will be blessed with a baby boy next month. I've already decided to get along well with my son's future wife.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?" "We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.